Morning, folks. If my panelists want to come up, that would be great, just for sake of time. My name's Tony Panciera. Thank you, Donna, for those remarks. I think it's a good segue into this conversation with some active and present leaders in our business community. I work for the Greater Milwaukee Committee, specifically on MK United, which is an effort to connect and expand prosperity in our greater downtown of Milwaukee. So I think very much embedded in this conversation that we started this morning with that the very adjacent neighborhoods to downtown, and looking forward to expanding that out with the panel that we've got here today. I'm excited for this panel. I think there's some important voices for you to hear from in terms of perspective as an audience of planners, elected officials, advocates, business leaders. I think there's really some valuable pieces of information for them to share with you. And with that, I'm going to do really quick intros because of our time, but we have three esteemed executives here. Austin Ramirez, President and CEO of HUSCO International. Cristy Garcia-Thomas, Chief External Affairs Officer at Advocate Aurora Health, and Greg Nickerson, Chairman at Rutter. Now the title of the session, to frame up just a little bit, the title of the session, I'm going to pull back from that a little bit because in our early conversations and the reality for some of our panelists is that it's not just connecting jobs through transit. So want to lay that bare, and I think none of them will take a step back from this if I say they're admittedly, none of them would consider themselves transit experts to begin with. So I think we're going to have a broader conversation than just that today, but looking forward to some business leaders sharing transparently their experiences, particularly as it connects to their workforces. So with that, I'm not going to do deeper bios, but would invite you, if there's relevant experience, to highlight that you'd like to share, but would like to start out with all the panelists, a question around how does transportation broadly intersect with employment at your company? What's working well, and what are your needs? Austin?
All right, I'm first in line over first. So I'm Austin Ramirez. I am the CEO of HUSCO. We've got about 450 employees in Waukesha, just off the freeway, and another couple hundred in Whitewater, Wisconsin. I live in Whitefish Bay. I spent about 10 years living in downtown Milwaukee, so I kind of commute across the city. All my employees drive to work. They don't take the bus. The bus, there you go. I wish, can we recording it? Just put it down? Yeah, I think we are recording it. Yeah. Thanks, bump it up. Talk to me. I think the microphone didn't like what I was saying. Our employees all drive to work. They don't take the bus. There's not bus options. I think public transit is great in urban environments when you can connect high-density areas, but for me as an employer in the suburbs, my folks drive. And if you were to ask me what the one thing I'd like to see that would help my employees, it actually wouldn't be transit, it'd be affordable housing in Waukesha so that our folks could actually live closer to where they work, to the extent that we have employees all across southeastern Wisconsin. So I'll pause there and let my other panelists answer.
So good morning, Cristy Garcia-Thomas, Chief External Affairs Officer for Advocate Aurora Health. We employ roughly 35,000 employees across the state of Wisconsin. The majority of those employees are in the Milwaukee, Ozaukee, Waukesha, Racine area. At St. Luke's alone, we have over 5,000 employees that work at the St. Luke's Hospital. A fair amount of our employees, take the bus. And we've got 3 shifts, and you'll notice that most of our hospitals are on bus lines, which is critically essential to the vitality of our employee base. Arriving to work on time has been tricky for individuals who have to take the transit. So we've created flexible shifts so that if our employees are running late, whether it's due to weather or whatever the case may be, we've got to provide some sort of flexibility to them to make sure that they're able to come into work and start their day but also make sure that we've got all of our patients covered. And when you think, for us, one of the things that's a huge issue is access to transportation for our patients. A high number of our patients have to utilize different means, and transit is critically important for our patient population in order to receive the health care that they need. So I'll maybe stop there. I've got some other things that I can add to the conversation, but that's just the dynamics of what we deal with from a healthcare perspective.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Greg Nickerson. I'm chairman of Beta Rutter. I think what you're going to see with we three is some very different points of view, very different lenses to what transportation means to our businesses. So we only have one brick and mortar facility in Wisconsin. It's downtown on Water Street, the old Lackey and Joy's building. In fact, Dan Walsh, back in the corner, helped us go find that beautiful building. 5 years he toiled with me looking for the right place to be, and we moved in 2017. So we're a marketing advertising agency. And my perspective, as Tony and I have talked over time, is much beyond the state of Wisconsin, much beyond Milwaukee. So most of our clients are not located here, the vast majority of it. They're located all across the country, and in some cases, international clients. So our most recent one came out of Toronto. So my perspective when I look at transit and all things Milwaukee is what kind of impression does it leave with our prospective clients and our current clients, because they travel in here. Many have never been to Milwaukee. Now, if you want a success story, I've never had anyone say their expectations haven't been exceeded. You know, they get here and say, oh my God, I thought there's just beer and factories, and wow, you got a beautiful downtown, very vibrant. But they also bring some interesting perspectives. So that's a lens that I look at, you know, the brand of Milwaukee from. So our move downtown in 2017, we were in Brookfield, Bishop's Woods. And frankly, one of the reasons we decided to move, the most significant one is a creative services business we felt should be in a vibrant downtown location. But we could not impact our diversity of employee base in Bishop's Woods. You know, to get there by bus was a circuitous route, took forever. So one of the reasons we wanted to move downtown is to give ourselves better odds of increasing the diversity of our workforce, and that did help for sure. So got some other thoughts, but it's important for you to know the lens which I approach this from. And we can't just sit around and talk about people in Milwaukee. We got to, as the mayor said, how are you going to get to 1 million people? We got to create a brand and experience here that's better than something they can find anywhere else in the country. So.
Well, I appreciate those comments so far from each of your perspectives, and I think just a couple things touching on that. Austin, you were talking about housing density and that needing to be a part of it in terms of how we're developing. We talked a little bit this morning about not only infill but planning around where those existing models, the BRT North and South, are more local to Milwaukee area. Cristy, you brought up that reliability aspect of like. Both patients needing to be there on time for appointments in order to keep things running smoothly, but also employees needing to be able to get there with that reliability, and that's a critical thing we've also talked about today in terms of that importance. And Greg, you brought up some of that vibrancy aspect around not only talent attraction but client attraction. I think I'm going to go off script a little bit here. We'd had some other questions prepped, but because of some time, I want to leave some space for Q&A, and I want to hear the panelists maybe answer something that might be on their mind, but in terms of besides the density piece, reliability of service, if there was one wish that each of you had for how a room of folks that are trying to move in one direction as a region can be impacting this space of multifaceted transportation, if there's one thing that you think we could collectively do. I'm going to start with Greg and then come back down the line.
Ooh, one thing. I'm not sure I can come up with one thing.
Related to transportation.
Transportation, yeah. So I guess the last mile efforts are encouraged. I didn't mention we have a Chicago office right down in the Loop, and so we have like 25 people. The Amtrak is wonderful. I mean, it's a great way to get to the intermodal station, and then they got about a mile and a half to get to our offices. So, the bus, the hop, if we could get it a little closer to where we're at, that would make that transportation a little easier. And I guess the other thing I would mention is don't forget about the airport. You know, the impression that the airport leaves with first-time visitors here is critical. And that just, to be honest here, it's not nearly as good of an experience as it should be, you know, compared to other cities around. There's no light rail, there's no real way to get downtown from the airport unless you want to take over to the Amtrak station and, you know, catch one of those trains. It's just not good. So don't forget about creating a good experience when they arrive here. I hate to say it, hope nobody's in from the taxi business, but it's not good enough. It just does not leave a really good first impression. Inside the airport's pretty good. But I travel a lot, go to a lot of airports, and our experience here is not nearly as modern, contemporary as you see in a lot of other airports around the country.
So, is this on or, can you hear me? Okay. So, for us at Advocate Aurora Health, you know, our purpose is to help people live well, and that's all people. And one of the areas that we focus in heavily is around marginalized communities, people living in poverty. We know in Milwaukee the life expectancy of an individual born in one of the zip codes in Milwaukee is a 16-year life difference compared to where I live out in Mequon. And you know, the interconnectedness of the way in which our transits work between counties is critically essential to help people get access and upward mobility to jobs and higher paying jobs. As we know that some of the manufacturing, some of the different types of employment is connected to other counties versus in Milwaukee County. And I'm just gonna tell you a story because I thought about it as I was meeting with Tony this week, and that is 4 years ago. So I live in Milwaukee. I work out at the Right Height. I cut across the Mequon and I come down Green Bay Avenue and around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning every day. And as I'm driving into the gym, again, this is 4 years ago before COVID, I'd see a gentleman walking on Green Bay Avenue, an African-American man walking on Green Bay Avenue, and, in the rain, every morning. And one day I decided to stop because I could tell he was walking somewhere for employment. There's an industrial area in the Dodgers Bay Road. And when I pulled over, he was very nervous and uncomfortable with the fact that I was stopping him. And, I just said, hey, I know you're working, but, it's a 3-mile walk between where the bus drops him off and wherever it was that he was employed. He let me know right away that, he has a job and he works for this company and he wasn't creating any problems, which was not my intent. I called his employer to see if I could purchase a bike for him because every day, he's trying to get to work and he's got to walk 3 miles to get there and 3 miles back to get the bus. And the employer was less receptive to my offer. And I share that story because every day there's someone trying really, really hard to get to work and is trying to make a difference, and it's challenging and it's difficult. And unless you experience that or see it or witness it, we're all very blessed. We have our cars and we drive around this city, but that's not how the majority of the world lives. And so whatever you can do to make access easier for those who need it would be my wish. Thanks.
That's a good one, and I know last mile, which both of you have mentioned, is something of particular focus of a number of folks in this room. Corey's and work in the valley, I think, with some of the aqueducts. What's the word? The roads over. Thank you, viaducts going over the going over the valley, and in terms of folks getting to employment in the valley, we're just in some ways our hardscape is not designed for it. Austin, any thoughts to that question of the wish besides either density or beyond?
Yeah, I'd say it's really hard to justify investment in new transportation infrastructure. It's also really hard to change people's behavior. So if I could have a wish, I think the future is personalized autonomous vehicles. I'd love to see this region become a hub for the development and deployment of personal autonomous vehicles.
Gotcha. So we do have a little bit of time for some questions, probably 2, maybe 3. So if folks in the audience just want to put your hands up, we've got a couple mics that can come around. Questions for our business panel here today?
what's a city around the world that each of you think we could emulate or model? You all travel. Something come to mind relative to transportation density?
Well, it's close, but, so I have a son who's an architect that lived in New York, and just moved to Minneapolis, and the light rail from the airport gets used a lot. I think Atlanta has that too. I mean, that's a way to quickly get to where you want to go. That in terms of transportation anyway, that experience is good.
Cristy or Austin, any thoughts? Gotcha. And I know personally, I'm an advocate of we can learn a lot from other places, but we also need to be trying to make Milwaukee and Greater Milwaukee the best possible version of ourselves, not necessarily trying to emulate something, but I would agree that the experience, to Greg's earlier points about airports in some places and how you're welcome, the experience in Minneapolis is phenomenal. Tracy?
Sure. So I know we talked a lot throughout the morning about the role of public investment in transit and transportation, and I know that many business owners, business parks in certain municipalities are looking to partner more closely with private sector. And I'd wonder what your thoughts would be, and I know there's 3 different industries kind of represented, how you think about that, and is a private sector investment or private sector interest a good opportunity to encourage more public sector engagement?
So to clarify, Tracy, subsidy from private employers to support increased development in this trajectory from the public space? Any thoughts on that?
You know, I got a million problems I got to deal with in my business. I've got inflation everywhere. I got supply chain issues. You know, to come to me and ask me to subsidize transportation is a hard sell. To come to me with a value proposition and to solve a problem that I have with employment in a way that's reasonable and has a return on investment, that's a totally different discussion.
Yeah, I kind of wish, so the other son lives in San Francisco, works for the company formerly known as Facebook, Meta, and I wish we had companies that had $100 billion of cash sitting around, because you guys probably heard, they literally run their own bus lines from the city of San Francisco. They underwrite the entire thing, no cost, because, they don't have a very good transportation system in the Bay Area. In case, it's not developed down to that area. So I think we subsidize bus riders, buses and some other areas too, just to encourage usage of it. So, but in terms of flipping to a Meta, Facebook, and all those tech companies do the same thing, that just takes a lot of cash and a lot of margin in your business to pull it off.
Yeah, I would just add that we do subsidize as a benefit to our employees who ride the bus. We have to help subsidize that, I think. To echo Austin's comment, I think it would be a tough sell unless there was, huge upside.
This is a question for Cristy. What's the role of faith communities in partnering with them? I'm aware that some faith communities have actually created van services for their congregants to help them get to jobs. What's the role of that whole community overall?
Yeah, so I can speak to it from a healthcare perspective. So we partner heavily with our faith-based communities. There's a number of different transit services that we tap into, the faith-based being one of them too. But we use it more from a perspective of helping patients, their congregation, who are our patients, get to our hospital or get to their appointment. And so we have different models of partnerships that we have around transportation in order to make sure that people have the right access to health care.
Just to pick up on that, not faith-based, but we have 35 Afghan refugees working second and third shift operations at HUSCO, and also a large Burmese population, and they carpool together, and that's great.
We've got time for one more question. Tony,
can I just comment real quick
Please.
on something? There's a lot of talk about transportation related to commuting. So I'm in a professional services business, right? You guys have to have human beings showing up, you know, take care of us at the hospital and at the factories. I read, I think 50% of the work population can work from home. Beth's gone. As much as I love to think I'm getting all my employees back downtown, it ain't happening. So we should look at transportation and with the lens of creating a better quality of life for our folks, and where do they go for cultural activities and whatnot, because I'd be happy to get them back in the office 2 to 3 days a week. Right now, we're not mandating anything. So for their ability, you know, we have a great quality of life story to tell here. We just don't tell it very in an offensive, you know, we're playing defense all the time. So, yep, Florida doesn't pay any taxes, but guess what you're paying for homeowners insurance, especially after the next couple of days, you know? That's a terrible thing to say, but those things never get roped into a quality of life index that we look pretty good, and I think we'll look better in the future with some of the issues they're having on the coast with weather and heat and whatnot, so let's get ready for it, because that's the way we're going to, that'll help us get to that 1 million population target.
And appreciate that, calling out that contrast, Greg, because you're right, that is a reality for you and your business. For Cristy and Austin, having a remote workforce, I'm sure there's certain degrees where it's possible, but certain degrees where it's definitely not anytime soon. And that is some of that reality of this space we're entering into with a recalibration or a readjustment. Out of respect for the panelists today, I'm going to cap the conversation. I've got plenty more questions I could ask, but could we please have a round of applause for the three up here?